Due to historical reasons, JS doesn't have block scopes. You only have global and function scope. It is too late to redesign JS, therefore we just have to make the most of what we have. Meaning we just have to play function scope to its most. The most commonly used and important real-life application of function scope is Closure and IIFE. To create a usable closure, you need 5 items, 2 functions, 2 variables, and the keyword return. First, we create a global function called outer. Then inside it, we create a local variable num and a local function inner. Then, the most important step, we return inner. We set num's value to 1. Inside the inner function, we console log num++. Console log num++ means outputting num first and then add 1 to its value. We returned the inner function inside the outer function. Therefore, invoking the outer function will get us the definition of the inner function. This means the inner function can be invoked at the global scope. Return did the magic here. Then we assign the outer function invocation to a global variable inner. Now, the global variable inner is the identifier of the returned function. Then, let's invoke inner for 3 times. What kinds of result do you think we will get? 1, 2, 3 is what you will see on your screen. When we first run the program, the global scope will be added to the scope chain as the first link. When the outer function gets invoked, the outer function's scope will be added to the scope chain, right under the global scope. When we run the inner function for the first time, the inner function scope will be added to the scope chain, under the outer function scope. The inner function will retrieve num from the outer function scope. At this time, num is 1. Therefore, we will first get 1 on the console table. Then the inner function will reset num to 2. So now in the outer function scope, num is 2, not 1 anymore. Like we said before, every time you invoke a function, you will get a scope chain. So when we invoke the inner function for the second time, its new scope will also be added to below the outer function scope. The second inner function will also retrieve num from the outer function scope. At this time, num's value is 2. So, the second invocation of the inner function will log 2 on the console table. Then the second invocation of the inner function will reset num to 3. Naturally, the third invocation of the inner function will console log 3 on the console table. This is why we can get 1, 2, 3. The 3 scope of the inner function retrieves num from the same location. Because of the global variable inner, the outer function scope will stay alive in memory. This is why the second and third invocation of the inner function can access the same num. But if we do this, instead of assigning the outer function to inner, we put 2 sets of parentheses behind it. The first set of parentheses will invoke the outer function and get us the inner function's definition. The second set will invoke the returned inner function. If we invoke the inner function for 3 times this way, what do you think we will get on the console table? Remember, every time you invoke a function, you get a function scope attached to its parent scope. If you think the result is still 1, 2, 3, then you need to review this whole lesson. The result will be 1, 1, 1. Like we said before, every time you invoke a function, you get a function scope. Here, in total, we invoked the outer function for 3 times. Therefore, below the global scope, there are 3 identical but independent outer function scopes. Below each outer function scope, there is an inner function scope. Therefore, each invocation of the inner function retrieves num from its own outer function scope. This is why the result we got is 1, 1, 1, not 1, 2, 3.